the biggest thing I struggled with was I was putting a ton of expectations on what I wanted out of people, but in reality, I can only get from God.
Welcome to the Holy and Healthy Podcast, a podcast to help each of us live out the life that God has called us to live. If you enjoyed this podcast or today's episode, please leave us a review and share it with others. We hope you enjoy our conversation today.
Well, welcome to the Holy and Healthy Podcast. My name is Hunter Perry, and I am joined by a co-host today. It is not Mr. Caleb McMains. I have my friend Tyler Goodrich on today. Tyler, how you doing, man?
I'm doing good, Hunter. How are you?
Dude, I'm doing well. A little tired.
I'm with you.
Doing well. We had youth night last night.
Yeah, it was insane.
Which was crazy. On your end, I know there's a bunch of stuff we'll get into just about who you are and what you do here at Rock Point. But there are over 1,300 youth in attendance. Close to 300 salvations.
Yeah.
Said yes to Jesus, which is incredible. But yeah, dude, it was a late night. It was a crazy night. It was so fun though. I don't think I went to bed until about 3 a.m.
That's insane, man.
So,
and you're here at 9 a.m. on Monday,
bro,
so.
hey, work don't stop just because fun happened. You know what I mean?
That's true.
So, dude, it was so fun. So, Tyler, why I said you experienced it from a different perspective. Who are you? What do you do? And why are you on today?
Yeah.
Well, don't get into why you're on today yet.
Yeah, I'll get to that at the end
yeah.
here. But so I am our youth music director here at Rock Point. So I get to hang out with all of our youth worship volunteers. We do a bunch of just stuff on the back end with programming for our high school, middle school services, focusing on worship and just the songs that we're able to sing and just cultivating that culture in those rooms. And so, yeah, it's been super awesome. Been at that for about 3 years now. So that's super crazy. You know, I went from a coffee shop barista to a music director role.
Yeah,
so
bro.
You want to talk about, God equipping the called. I was not equipped 3 years ago, but here I am, right? So, but yeah, no, it's been a fun journey. Been at Rock Point just for the last 10 years now. A big part of my story is just, serving, just being a part of the church, growing up in a Christian household with some amazing parents. And so, yeah, it's got me to here. Been married now for almost a year and a half now.
Yes,
so
sir.
That's been awesome, an awesome journey with my wife, Emily. We have a puppy who just turned 1, a little golden retriever puppy that keeps us going.
We love whiskey.
He makes life interesting. And so, that's been a blast too. And so, and then finishing up my engineering degree at ASU. So,
What's it called? What's the degree called?
It's mechanical engineering.
Okay.
Or technically, if you want to get specific, engineering with an emphasis in mechanical systems. So
That's why I wanted to know what it was, because that sounds really cool.
it is pretty cool.
I mean, mechanical engineering itself sounds cool, but with an emphasis in mechanical systems?
Yeah, mechanical systems. I did some automotive system stuff too.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Smart guy.
I like to think I am a little bit, but I got to stay humble. I got to stay a little humble. So, but yeah, so finishing that up. So I've been doing that full time and working full time. So,
Yeah, you've been
grinding.
in a grinding season, which has been cool.
Yeah.
I've known you for a while now, but for those who don't know, Tyler and I were roommates for a little bit there.
Yeah, before we got married.
In an apartment that was lovely known now as the Dad Pad.
Yep.
Which is not a trademark name, but if you decide to name your apartment the Dad Pad, it won't have the same aura as ours did.
That was next level.
But bro, I saw you always working on these freaking calculus things and like all this geometry stuff, and I'm like, yeah, I have no clue what you're doing.
Yeah, you would have loved my thermodynamics homework. You didn't get that one yet, but thermodynamics is a whole nother beast.
Well, that sounds like something in a video game. So
yeah,
maybe I would.
So maybe if there's any engineers listening to this, you might understand my pain. It was not a fun time. So
that's so funny. Well, Tyler, thanks for being on with me today.
Thanks for having me.
As a friend and just to get to talk for a little bit.
Yeah, it's been cool.
So we were chatting. For those wondering where Caleb is, we recently hired someone new on our youth team, so he's onboarding him today, which is awesome. His name is Mason. We love Mason.
Yeah, we do.
So Caleb spent time doing that. And as I was sharing with you that Caleb was taken, he needed to step away for today. You were like I asked you, I was like, dude, you want to join the podcast? You're like, yeah, I'd love to. And I was kind of thinking through maybe what we could talk about. And we have a running list of things that we have talked about, things that we haven't talked about yet. Yeah. And as you were looking through the list, you chose today's topic. And before saying it, I'll let you talk about it. But why did you choose what we're going to talk about today?
Yeah, when I was looking through that list, obviously I think there's a lot of cool topics that you guys are going to be able to talk about in the next couple weeks, months. But yeah, I saw this one and it resonated with me. Not, again, I kind of spoke into like how I do a lot of the worship stuff, just a lot with school life, whatever. But this one was something that it went back to when I was in high school, and it's something I'm even working through now. And so it's a big part of my story, a big part of my testimony, and just I just wanted to speak on it and also give insight into ways that I've sort of wanted to combat this and really get myself to the place that I am today, where I feel healthier. I feel like while this is something that I think I still struggle with, I think a lot of us still struggle with, even when we feel like we've kind of got it figured out. It's just something that's super close to my heart. And so, yeah, being able to kind of talk through how I went from this junior in high school that was just really deep in the pit of just overcome with what we're about to talk about, and looking where I'm at now, it's really cool to see how God kind of orchestrated a lot of things and really gave me the strength to kind of be like, hey, we're gonna work through this. You're gonna learn. You're gonna mature. And so I was lucky enough to kind of be able to get that understanding and get that clarity that I needed around COVID. But I know that there's a lot of people out there that might still be struggling with this, and they don't really know where to go with that. So yeah, excited to dive into it.
Well, yeah, dude. I mean, I'm excited to hear a little bit more about like your story and journey with it. But yeah. I mean, just with data, loneliness is the epidemic of people.
Yep.
Again, COVID is usually attributed to being a part of, why people feel it today. But as I was reading in prep for this, what I thought was kind of crazy is I found a stat before COVID. I was trying to find something in like 2019 before COVID happened. This came out that in a Harvard Loneliness in America survey before COVID, it said 6 in 10 young adults reported feeling lonely frequently, almost all the time, or all the time, which is a lot. 60% at some point, whether it's all the time or a little bit, frequently in some way, felt lonely. And then this is a recent one. It says roughly half of young adult respondents in a recent survey said they only had a few minutes of genuine connection about their well-being with someone over the last several weeks. So there's a piece of it to where I know you'll talk about it, and I even have my personal story and the journey of loneliness too, but there's a lot of people out there that regardless of the people we encounter, there's people everywhere. Mm-hmm. You see them in the grocery store, you see them at church, you see them in the library, wherever you're at, there's people. And you can be around a lot of people, for some reason feel lonely. And it's a pretty big epidemic. And so I hope that from our conversation, one, that we can share, and it'll be cool for us just to sit and chat about it, but also for anyone listening to this to be able to see, like, one, first of all, we see you as, like, you're okay, and there's a lot of people that struggle with this too, if you struggle with it, but I hope today is helpful and insightful for people.
I think it will be.
So why don't you open up a little bit about your kind of story and walk in this a little bit, and then jump into some things that you were kind of telling me before we hopped on, just some things you saw in what you read.
No, absolutely. So yeah, I as a high schooler, again at this point when I was a freshman, sophomore, so right off the get go, I really started getting integrated in church. That's how it started for me. Started coming to Rock Point, finding my niche, finding my gifts, and obviously for me that was worship. So I learned to play drums, joined the worship team, and so in essence, I really did start to have people around me. I started to build that community already, and for me it wasn't necessarily at school to start, but I had a place where I was surrounded by like-minded people, that I had people pouring into me. I had colleagues, I had peers that are freshmen, sophomores too, that are kind of in the same boat as me. And so it was really cool to see. I was like, man, I have a place, not only that I get to serve, but that I get to be around people, and people in the church, right? And so surrounding myself just with, again, at that time, what I thought were like, man, these can be those people that I can really start to build deep fellowship with. And so, as time would kind of go on, it's like you're serving in worship consistently. You're joining the youth crew in your youth ministry. I joined the theater program at school. And so this wasn't like
I did not know that.
You didn't know that I was in theater?
Bro, you did theater?
Okay, I have to...
It's not a judging comment.
It's a disclaimer, though. There is a disclaimer. I was in tech theater.
Oh,
there's
so
a difference.
You weren't on stage.
I wasn't on. Well, okay. I had a cameo.
I do know that you were in theater. Can you show me the video?
Yes, I did have a couple cameos. We did Shrek the Musical one year. I was the head of the dragon.
Nice.
So that was pretty cool. So we followed the actress around because she was like in her own little costume and singing and stuff. But we
Fiona?
No, there was the dragon. That was her name.
Gotcha.
But she wasn't obviously like wings and all that stuff.
She was a person.
She was a person, but we built like a gigantic flying dragon. And so me and a couple of my friends were holding the like PVC pipe poles, running around the stage trying to like mimic it was a whole thing. Anyways, I did a couple other things too in there, but I was mostly...
you had the thing off to the side.
I did, yep.
That you reached out your hand and you pulled it back.
Yep. Because I was a stage manager. So basically like what that means is I was on one of the wings and I was kind of telling people when to go out on stage, or we were doing the like, you're shifting things around for different scenes or whatnot. But yeah, there was one where, the actress playing Fiona just chucked an inflatable deer to the side of the stage, and it didn't quite make it to the curtain. And so, me being 6'6", Mr. Tallboy over here, just reached out my arm and I snatched that thing off the stage so fast. It was in rehearsal, and they're like, the director was like, we need that to happen every time. So sure enough, every single time we did that show, I was just waiting for my moment. It was great.
So good. That's so good.
So I did tech theater, not actual theater, but I got to hang out with some really cool people. And so I got to the point where I was like, man, I feel like I have, so many different opportunities for community. And and I have people, I'm in small groups. Again, I'm integrated into the church, into my school. Family life was great. But I just was always feeling lonely. And so I could never wrap my head around what was happening. Why am I feeling this way? Why do I not feel loved? Why do I feel like I have no friends? Why is no one reaching out to me? And it is that sort of like crippling, just depressed state of, I'm not motivated to do anything anymore. And so my initial response was, let me go try a new church. I need to find somewhere where people will love me. Hey, I need to ditch the whole theater thing. Let me focus on this. Or worse, even worse, let me isolate myself even more. And so that was something, it was just a crazy season of, I don't want community at my school anymore. I'm just going to show up to class. I'm going to sit in the front. I'm going to do my work, and I'm going to go. And at church, it was like, no one's good enough for me. No one loves me for who I am. No one sees me. No one values me. And it's like, man, I'm stacking all the chairs in youth crew on a Sunday night. There are people there that, love me, that are speaking into me, serving with me. I have a small group, but it was just always something that was in the back of my mind, and it really messed me up. It was really tough. And so after I graduated, I kind of, COVID was obviously a weird season, and I think everyone kind of went through something different.
Yeah.
I think for me, it was a big shift in my life because I had to change my perspective. And that was the way that I was able to really sort of deal with it, was changing my perspective of things. And so it's funny, I when I was kind of prepping for today, I looked up the psychologist definition of what loneliness is.
Perfect. Yep.
And they said this: loneliness is the state of distress or discomfort that results when one perceives a gap between one's desire for social connection and the actual experience of it. And so for me, like when I was reading that, I kind of remember where I was at when I was really trying to decipher, like, why am I dealing with this? How do I combat it? I changed that word desire to expectation. And I think for me, the biggest thing I struggled with was I was putting a ton of expectations on what I wanted out of people, but in reality, I can only get from God. And that's what I think. I was like, I can't put God-sized expectations on imperfect people.
Yeah.
Because while it's okay to value certain things about people, to surround yourself with certain people,
absolutely, for sure,
you also have to realize that, we're all sinners, we're imperfect, we all have our own stuff going on. And so if you start to seek out things that only God can give you from people, you're going to start to feel like they're failing me. They're not loving me the right way.
You always be disappointed.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I think for me, that was the start, was let me reassess what my expectations on people are, because maybe that'll start to help me realize, like, the good that people are giving me, and also start to feel like, man, these people are really actually pouring into me. I wasn't realizing it, or I was seeking something else when I should have been seeking that from God, if that makes sense.
Dude, absolutely, that makes sense. And I need to call this out right now. You are only because you just took a drink of it, but you and I are a little bit of energy drink enthusiasts.
Oh, yeah.
Now, I was surprised that you brought a Red Bull in today because you're a Monster boy. Yeah. But, yeah, if at moments the other side of the mic gets a little bit muted, it's because we're both taking a drink of our Red Bulls.
Yeah, we're both tired. Again, remember, youth night was last night, guys. Give us some grace. We're struggling a little bit, but we're getting through.
No, this is so great. Dude, I want to point out a few things just as you were talking. And just something, I don't know if I've ever fully put it together, but as you were talking through, because I feel like most of the time when people say they're lonely, the things that we can track it to are, well, are you involved in community? Are you serving? Are you consistently around a group of friends? And I would say for the most part in conversations I have, that's usually the no. Like, no, I'm not. No, I'm not serving. No, I'm not doing that. And so then you can almost be like, well, then that might be a piece of what you are missing. And I would say a genuine amount of time that does tend to remedy some of it. But I think what was kind of, it's not, I don't think it's interesting. It's more so, I think, something to like take a note of, that loneliness is not action-based. It's not even proximity-based. Loneliness is something that's like core innate within who you are, regardless of what's currently going on.
Yeah.
Because you were in community, you were serving, you were with your friends, but there was a piece of you that felt like you were not getting out of people what you thought you expected, and like the definition said, desired from people. And I think that alone might be kind of the first step for anyone who feels that, is to maybe check your desire and expectations. We talk about this a lot when it comes to dating, but even when you like bring your expectations and desires to someone that you want to date or get married to, you come with this laundry list of stuff. They're not gonna like be able to live up to that.
Yeah, they're not going to check every box.
No.
You know what I mean?
And if you're waiting for everyone to hit that, like you're gonna be waiting forever because you can't expect for someone to fill a God-sized expectation, dude. That's so good, and I think that even helps me out as I sort of think about my own journey. I never felt fully lonely until COVID. I had moments where I had a really rough relationship in college and stuff like that, but I never felt like fully lonely until probably early April of COVID. Now I was living with a really good friend of mine. But in moments of like quarantine and stuff, I'd go maybe like a full almost 2 weeks of time just by myself. And I was still interning here and doing stuff, but there was a moment where I was like sitting in my apartment in Chandler and legitimately was like, I almost paralyzed. I was playing video games up till like 5, 6 in the morning and working at Walmart, interning at the church. I was burning myself out work-wise. I couldn't hang out with my friends. I was barely calling home. But when I did call home, my parents were just telling me to move back home. I didn't want to do that. And just like sitting in my apartment one day, and I like broke. And like I've never felt that low again. But I needed a lot of help. And then thankfully the next weekend, one of my favorite pastors, Craig Rochelle, put up a message, and all the online video messages.
Oh yeah.
Thankfully, they have the capacity and they do it every week. But he put out this sermon and he talked about perspective, and he used this picture frame, and in the picture frame it was just a picture of clouds, and on one side he had on the whole picture in the top right there was a sun, and then there's more clouds, and the bottom left there was a bunch of dark stormy clouds, and it was a really beautiful picture. And in this picture frame he rolled out, he actually took a smaller frame and he would kind of trace the picture with different things.
Yeah.
And in different places. He put it in the middle, and then he put a top left where there was nothing, just blue sky. And then he put it towards the bottom left with all the dark clouds. And he started talking about what it looks like in our brains when we frame things a certain way. And he said, so many of us right now are right here, right in the darkness of the clouds, right where the storm is, and that's where our brain is. And he's like, what's crazy, though, is we have the ability to reframe our mind. And then he pulled it up, and he put it in the top right, where the sun was. He's like, what's crazy? This is the same picture. Like, he pulled the frame off, and he's like, look, like, this is one picture. But so many of us are living here and not here. And after I heard that, like, I'm so thankful for him, and I'm sure he's not going to hear this ever, but that was so helpful for me and genuinely got me out of my season of feeling so lonely and depressed. Was getting exactly what you said, this perspective shift of, okay, like, I know I'm feeling this, but there's a God out there who loves me. There are people who love me. I just need to be able to approach them without having these laundry list of expectations, and start, I think, a process of contentment, but also longing at the same time.
Yeah.
Like, I longed for deep relationships. I longed for deep connection. I longed to see my friends again. But there was a part of me after that day that was content with being like, okay, I just got to walk through this. I got to navigate this. I can't let it take me out, but I got to be able to, like, how do I get kind of to this other side. So I think the other part of loneliness is if we let it sit for a long time. We've talked about it before, just in our conversations. But like loneliness is so powerful that it can literally start to do physical things to us.
Oh yeah.
Mental things to us. I looked this up, just like what does it do? Like it can physically hurt you. It can bring you illnesses. It can lead to like elevated cortisol levels, which starts to mess up your mind. It can weaken your immune system, cause inflammation in your body in different places. Like loneliness, I don't want to say unaddressed, but that's the only thing that's coming to mind. Like loneliness unaddressed and loneliness, I think, uncared for, can start to produce some things in you that you never wanted. But I think part of why we're doing this today is to help those identify. Yeah, I feel lonely. You might not even need to identify it. You probably just know it. But be able to hopefully like kind of get to the other side of it to see like there is a God that cares about you. There are people that care about you. But yeah, that was a really tough time for me.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of, I think, similarities with yours and my story. But I want to kind of kick it back to you for a little bit. You talked a little bit about these God-sized expectations on people. But I also know, just because we're friends, this isn't something that you like kick to the curb. You know?
Yeah.
Like how pick it back up from when you kind of realize that, like keep the story going a little bit.
Sure. Yeah. So again, like post-COVID and starting to really focus in on how can I lower my expectations of what I'm wanting people to give me, right? Or ways I want them to fill me up. It really was like the first step, like, right? Like, I think I like what you said with like your story, and just, I think as people that are dealing with loneliness, like we're going to go through seasons of it all the time. You know, I don't think we could ever say like, man, I have never felt lonely since this day or something like that. I think there's going to be seasons where it's like, man, I feel a little lonely today.
Yeah.
And I think that's okay. I think that it's the first step is like realizing it and moving forward, right? So do you need to kind of reassess your expectations of people? Do you practically need to put yourself in positions of community and groups, and maybe I need to go serve, maybe I need to initiate that phone call or that text. And so that's where I was at, was like, all right, I finally have the first step to the puzzle. I need to move forward, and that was the way I did it, was let me kind of throw away this like almost legalistic view of what I was expecting, you know, fellow Christians really to like, guys, come on, let's get it together. Like, you guys, I'm feeling this way, and that's not cool. That's not what God has called us to do, but it was wrong. You know, like that was a very warped and skewed view of what I was expecting my brothers and sisters in Christ to do. And so I was like, I need to kick that to the curb for sure. And so, all right, now we are in the middle of COVID, so I do still want to focus on the practical. And so, you know, luckily for me, I got plugged in here. That's when I started the barista job.
Oh yeah, true.
Was during COVID. And luckily, like there was like 3 or 4 of us, and the other 3 were either the close friends I had in high school, or they were like, it was Jonesy. Mm-hmm. He was the other one. And so, you know, just those connections that you've built over the past, you know, couple years. And so it was really cool, because I was like, all right, even in the middle of COVID, you know, I'm working a 10-hour work week, because not a lot of people were coming to get coffee during COVID. I mean, maybe they were. I mean, it was a season for sure. And so that was helpful, because I was like, well, I'm getting at least some sort of connection. Mm-hmm. And, you know, you're just kind of washing the dishes or pulling a shot of espresso. It's like you get to have conversations with people you're working with, or the people that are coming in. And so that was huge. But kind of, yeah, fast forwarding over the last couple years, there's been a lot of times where I'm like, I think I kind of fall back into that mindset again of like, man, I just feel disconnected. I feel lonely. I feel like I don't feel valued by people. Hey, that person hasn't really reached out, and I feel like I've initiated the last 10 times to go get coffee. And it's not that the person said no, but it's like, man, why don't they want to hang out with me? Are they really thinking of me? Like, I think as humans, we just have these, lies kind of seep into our brains of just like, oh, this person hasn't done this. Like, do they really feel like that about me? Are they just saying that? Like, their actions don't really speak, aren't really reflecting what they're saying to me. So that's where my mind's always gone of like, I think I fall back into the like, when I struggle with that for so long, my brain kind of just goes back into that state of, well, it's not really gone away, and so the biggest thing has been, I think, just really focusing on my relationship with God first.
Yeah.
Right? And like making sure that I understand my identity, that I understand that God loves me no matter what, that God will never forsake me, that God's always there, that he's always working. And it's like, I know sometimes as Christians, we don't always feel that, right? But I think just trying to cement myself in biblical truth, that's like God is for me, God is with me, and God loves me. It's really just more of like, I can stand firm on that, and I'll always have that. But even when I'm feeling lonely, I'm going to push through it.
Yeah.
I'm going to be aware of it. And I'm just going to keep being the person that I am. Let me go and love other people. Let me continue to put myself in community, because I know that isolation is the worst thing that I can do.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I wouldn't say like even now that there's something that has been sort of this like, this is the answer, that every time I feel this way, this is what I do. But talking about it, putting myself out there, continuing to show up to work, continue to show up to church every single week, and just be my most authentic self, even when I do feel broken, when I do feel lonely, is being like, hey guys, you're getting about 60% of Tyler because I've been feeling this way.
Yeah.
And I think that just self-awareness is a big thing, and just being like, I don't want to feel this way anymore. So what can I do practically to at least put myself out there, get myself in a routine, even just going to the gym. Go to the gym, like take care of yourself, even when you feel like other people aren't there to pour into you, if that makes sense.
No, that makes a lot of sense. The thing I was sitting with, I was sort of wrestling in my brain to see if it was like something that accurate or worth saying, but you were talking about how you could possibly in this season of feeling that way, reaching out to someone 10 times and they never reach out to you, feeling a sort of way about a person. And I think how you handle and go about that, like, is super healthy. And you can get to the other side, you realize, yeah, I'm 60% of Tyler today. But we'll talk about it. We've talked about it. I know Emily's a good help in that way too.
Yeah.
But I think as you were talking, kind of hit my brain. I think if we're not careful in our feelings of loneliness, because we will have them. I don't think loneliness is a curable disease necessarily.
Yeah, I would agree.
There are ways to continue to medicate it and to, but I don't know if it'll fully be eradicated. But I think in the moments of feeling it, the danger is if you're not crippled by it and your identity is not in feeling lonely, I think what Satan will do and what he wants to do to you is he'll kind of make you a victim. And in every situation, in every category, is he'll use your loneliness feeling and make you the victim to everyone else. Because I could see how even the example you brought up could then swing in every direction of your life. Even in work, it's like, oh, I've been showing up and nobody's recognizing me and no one's my friend, and like you might start treating people a lot differently, and you just become kind of the victim mentality to everyone else, and that is probably the worst or the best sign of unhealth.
Yeah,
is when you start to live out of a victim mentality, treating people poorly. I would say that the best sign to see how healthy you are is how you treat people, and that would start to turn like, oh, you're decently swinging unhealthy. But I think I don't know, I'm going to swing it this way. I think one of the cool things about loneliness, but that's kind of an oxymoron. That doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I will say this, though. one of the things, at least that made me feel like it's okay that I feel lonely at times, is the greatest example of human experience, the greatest example of what a human life looks like is Jesus. But Jesus was also lonely.
Mm-hmm.
And we talked about this before we hopped on, but you see Jesus he had moments where he'd go away and spend time with his Father.
Yep.
And he'd pray, and then he'd come back, which, like you said, the first thing is a good relationship with God. Jesus was human, though. And we see I would argue, the two most human moments in Jesus' life. And he goes and he prays in the Garden of Gethsemane. And he's literally asking God. He says, Abba, Father, and he prays for God to strengthen him. Literally like, Dad, I need your help. And he's like, take this cup away from me if it's not your will. And he doesn't. And then he prays, Father, give me strength. Pater, give me strength. Which is instilling kind of the authority and who God is again. And you see God doesn't take the cup away, but instead he sends an angel to strengthen him. But as he's praying, he goes and he looks at his disciples who he's asked to be there with him. He's asked to stay awake. He's asked to be present in their sleep. And he says the flesh is weak, but the spirit is strong. It's just another reminder for us. Our flesh is so weak and we'll feel these ways. But he's abandoned sort of by his disciples. Yeah. And then hours later, you see him whipped. You see him pulled apart by these whips, and then he gets on a cross and is hung there by nails in between two criminals. And then he says, Father, why have you forsaken me? And regardless of the theology there, he's not just alone from people. Now he feels alone from his Father. And there's theological differences when it comes to that. But in all practicality, Jesus was very lonely in those moments.
Yeah.
And he dies, and obviously he raises 3 days later, which is why we celebrate and have nights like last night to celebrate that. But as I reflect on that, and even as I reflected on that a little bit in COVID, I talked about it in a message, but the thing that stuck out to me, and when I have moments of feeling lonely still, which I'm glad you brought up, I think the truth that I play back is that Jesus was lonely, so I never have to be.
Yep, 100%.
I can and I probably will feel lonely, but the awesome part is I don't have to be.
Yep.
Because Jesus was fully lonely. He went to the fullest extent of loneliness. He experienced everything in life, yet without sin. He was tempted in every way, but remained perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think the verses where it says so we don't have a high priest that can't empathize with our weaknesses. We don't have a savior that doesn't understand. We don't have a friend in Jesus that can't carry this with us. Jesus was lonely, so we never have to be.
Yep.
We can put it on him and talk to him and be like, dude, I'm struggling today. Hey, can you help me?
Yep.
I know you felt this before. Can you help me out? And a good father listens to their son's requests and their daughter's requests. And Jesus is a friend. And I think in moments where I feel that way, just being honest and being like, hey, I need help today.
Yeah.
I'm not feeling it. There's a reason the Holy Spirit is present with us.
100%.
To bring those things back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's cool too. I think as Christians, we want to model our life after Jesus, right?
Yeah.
And I look at it practically. It's did Jesus just walk the earth alone? And he's like, well, I got God with me. He's like, no, we were meant to be in community. That's why he had his disciples there too.
Absolutely.
And obviously he was their teacher, but for, those were his friends, too. Mm-hmm. And so it's cool to see again, even Jesus did need community. And I think we all need community. But we also need God too.
Yeah.
And it's you said, when he's just going my God, why have you forsaken me? It's that was his lowest point. That's when he felt the most lonely, and his disciples weren't there, and he felt that separation from God too. He felt both. And it's
Yeah.
like to see how those go together is important to note, I think, because it's like, yeah, we're in each element, you know, whether it's our practical, you know, relationships that we're having, but also, you know, where's my relationship with God? It can be a roller coaster. And so, you know, they're all not just going to be at this, like, at the pinnacle of like, man, my community's the best. I'm in the best place with I am with God, and it's just going to stay like that forever. So I think that sort of fluctuation is what can contribute to those moments where you're starting to feel lonely. But we also get to rest in the fact that, like, Jesus paid the ultimate death so that, you know, we can still have that relationship with God again.
Yeah.
And so I even go back to, like, in Genesis, right? Like, the creation story is like, you know, he put Adam on this earth, and he was like, man, it's perfect. There was that perfect harmony between God and man. But he was also like, well, I'm going to give him Eve, give him a person to do life with too. And so it's just always cool to see how, like, when we talk about community, when we talk about loneliness, fellowship, all these things, they all kind of do point back to, like, yes, we need people. Yes, we need biblical community. Yes, we need people that we can talk to, do stuff with, do life with. But, like, ultimately, you still have to have that relationship with God and be like, you have to have both. They go together. And that was something, like, again, when I was sort of trying to navigate, like, how do I get out of this rut and feeling of loneliness? It's like, well, you can't just focus on one and expect it to be better. You got to focus on both.
Yeah. And you can't dig yourself out of a hole, like, in that. Like, you have to bring God into that. You have to bring people into it. As you were chatting through the Adam stuff, like he said, it's not good for man to be alone, and brings Eve. And I think a piece of this that it's helpful for my brain, don't be alone in your loneliness. Like, bring people into that. Like, even, like, I don't know, it doesn't seem like Adam was lonely, but I think God possibly knew that he would feel that. Like, yes, our relationship with God is so vital to our survival, but I think the physical walking with people and being with people in a community kind of way is how God designed us. And God even made it a point to say, my relationship with Adam is very important, but his relationship with another human is also vitally important. Yeah. So it seems like the church is a majority of our answer. The Holy Spirit, because of Jesus' sacrifice and resurrection, now present with us, is part of the answer. Jesus himself is the answer. But yeah, I think cultivating this strong community and getting around other believers is so vital. And I want to talk about this too. I think a lot of the time when it comes in Christian circles and people I talk to, they feel lonely almost because of the church. And maybe church hurt them, or they walked through some really tough seasons and now they feel lonely. What I want to encourage, if that's you listening, people do hurt people, because we're all hurt people. But I hope that what you realize is God didn't.
Yeah.
Jesus didn't. The Holy Spirit still within you and still within other people. He didn't. People did. And the true restorer of peace and community with people, with Jesus, he's not in the language of shame. He doesn't speak that way. He doesn't speak in hurt either. And so what I would request, if that's how you feel, or maybe you know someone who does, remind you that people hurt people, but God doesn't hurt us. And so a strong community of believers, I would just recommend, try it again. Like, don't isolate yourself, like Tyler was saying. That's the worst thing that you can do. Be back around people, because it really does matter, and it really is powerful. As I was prepping for this, I was looking up, like, what's the remedy for loneliness? And I pulled up this Harvard Health study. It was part of where I got my the thing I said at the beginning. But this psychiatrist, Dr. Jacqueline Olds, who she works at McLean Hospital, and she's the co-author of 2 books on loneliness. she says, and this is, I think, for this quote is mainly for young adults and people who've gotten older, that we just naturally settle into loneliness. And this is why. She says, as we get older, people are often established in their social groups and aren't as available as they might have been in a different phase of life. So you have to be more entrepreneurial and work harder to make friends than you once did. And part of it, you talked about in high school. That was shifting for you. And you started to see that if I'm going to do this, I have to work a little harder at it. Mm-hmm. I have to change my expectations a little bit. I have to adapt a little bit. And if we never adapt our expectations, if we never work hard for it, and I love the word entrepreneurial. Like when we think about that, we think about it in the business space and the dudes who put their fingers together in front of their face,
the hustle,
like a prayer.
You know?
Like entrepreneurs. But like how crazy would it be to be an entrepreneur of community?
Yeah.
Like I so desperately want this that I'm going to act as an entrepreneur of community. And what's crazy is the psychiatrist Jacqueline Olds continues to go. She's like, here are ways that plays out. And dude, we talked about this last night, but her answer to loneliness is crazy. This is not a Christian psychiatrist, but she said the 3 ways to try and curb loneliness, to try and just give it a remedy. The first one is to join a group. The second is to serve or host people. And the third is to ask questions and listen. Which, if anything, tells me that the Bible's right. If a psychiatrist who is not thinking anywhere close to this is going, hey, guess what works for loneliness? Biblical truth. Mm-hmm. Biblical community. And being around people and asking questions. I love the third one, though, because a lot of the time when we're seeking loneliness, we're seeking for someone to love us, which is crazy, because the third one is like, I'm just going to ask questions and listen to other people. Because I think in that transaction, what you're so desperately longing for, if you give it, you'll get it.
Yep. No, that's huge, because I remember that was something that I had to learn, for sure, of like, you get to the spot in loneliness, for sure, where you're just like, I have nothing else to give, or I don't want it. I don't want to give it, right? Going back to like even just reaching out to someone, you're like, I've worked so hard and they've given me nothing. I'm not gonna invite them over, you know. Even though you want to hang out with someone, right? Like, why do those little things become so hard? And it's like, yeah, because you get to the point where all you want is to be poured into, and I think that's real, right? Like, there are times where we're tired and we don't want to pour into each other, but like, you definitely still need to put like work hard. And you need to go and put yourself in those positions where you can be surrounded by people, that you can be in a group, that you can serve other people. And I think for me, just to kind of like maybe just give you guys, whoever's listening, like a practical way of doing that is like, it really does kind of go back to like, what has God called you to do, right? He's called us to love others. He's called us to serve his church, you know? And so you kind of just, if you can just rely on that and be like, you know what, this person really hasn't, you know, maybe been the friend that I was hoping for in this season. But you know what, I'm going to send that text to be like, hey bro, how's it going? Do you have any chance, like, you can hang out this week, you know, just to keep pushing through. And you know, God will bless that, you know, like he's going to bring people into your life, and you're going to start to see how they're able to now pour into you, just because you're still making the conscious effort to put yourself out there and to pour into other people too, even when it's hard.
Yeah.
Even when you feel like you don't have a lot to give, I would say just keep putting yourself out there, keep loving people like Jesus. And I really do think good things will happen.
Yeah.
And you'll start to see those you'll see progress, and you'll slowly start to see like those relationships become even stronger, but it's not easy.
Yeah.
Right. Got to have that mindset of, you got to work for it.
You do.
Can't play the victim. Mm-hmm. But it is hard.
It is so hard.
Yeah.
Something that I did practically in a way that, like you're talking about, like you just keep doing it. I don't know if I heard it in a movie or if I read it in the Bible. I don't know. But something on my phone, every morning when I wake up and I open my phone, I have those like widgets or whatever. But when I open my phone, I open it to that. and it literally is just this big the black box that just says keep moving forward. And for me, I don't know why. I used to have it on my screensaver, but then I got clowned, so I moved it to my home screen because people thought I was like a, you know, that's what the entrepreneurial guy would have, is keep moving forward. So
Yep.
I decided a
Inspirational
little bit more
quote.
closet for myself.
Yeah.
I have it on my home screen. But I don't know. When I see that during the day, literally, it gives me this like quick trigger reaction whenever I see it. It's like, yeah, the day's going to keep happening. I might as well keep happening too. You know, the day's going to keep moving forward, so I might as well keep moving forward too. In any aspect of life. So regardless of feeling lonely and stuff, like, I think you got to acknowledge it. Like, it's a thing that's going on. It's an emotion that's really deep. And yeah, man, like you said, there's ways to practically move forward with it, but are we going to do it or not, I think is the question.
For sure.
Yeah.
This is also kind of not off topic, but we haven't really talked about it. And I don't really know exactly where my head's going with this, but I felt like we had to address it of like, as this young generation, as young adults and even adults, like the presence of social media too contributes so much to those feelings of loneliness, FOMO, and like you're seeing all these things happen, or you're seeing someone post a story and it's like they're hanging out with their friends, you're like, I wasn't invited. And so it's like that is so real of I think going back to that desire for connection. And it's like you have access literally in the palm of your hands of looking at something that's going to make you feel disconnected automatically. Like there's people like I don't even follow. They're just on like my For You page or whatever. And it's like, man, that's so cool. I wish I was there. It's some event in Florida or something. But I think we just have that desire for connection, and we're just seeing things that other people are doing. And so I would say if that's something you struggle with, like if you really do struggle with like social media and that's really sort of adding fuel to the fire of your loneliness, I think there are some really cool ways you can sort of remedy that in terms of, I'm not going to say completely delete your social media. Maybe you do. But maybe it's even just like, put restrictions on it, look at the people that you follow. Don't disconnect yourself from people. Don't isolate yourself. But just be aware that social media for sure, and really just so many other facets of technology, we're in the age where we're more connected than ever, but yet the most disconnected we've been from each other.
100%.
And so, while I think even for me, I don't know the answer to sort of fighting that battle with social media and technology, but just something I think we should be aware of, just as people, and how it is really making you feel. Yeah. And just be careful of it because it's dangerous. And if you're not careful, it'll make the issue worse. And so, yeah, I don't know where I was going with that, but I just felt we needed to address that because just so many people I talk to, I've gone through it.
Yeah.
I know a lot of our friends are going through it of just looking at things and filling our minds, and just it's really sad because it is such a cool thing to feel like, to celebrate things that people are doing, or it's access to news, what's going on around the world. But if we're not careful and we find ourselves in a deep season of loneliness, it can make things worse. And so yeah, maybe for you, if it's you're in a season of loneliness, maybe it's just delete that Instagram app for a little while. Yeah. I just thought we should talk about it.
Well, I think it's so good, and whether it's removing it or. I mean, when I was in college, our college football, like our coaches always said, like, if we're gonna beat our enemy, we have to understand our enemy. And with social media and just with the digital world, it is constantly putting out new novelties for us to just jump into, whether it's people or stories or news. And you have to understand, one, our brains are wired for that. our brains, we have a novelty bias that will always want to take new information over old information, recategorize it, and it will always put these dopamine enhancing quick responses that elicit these feel good things in our brain, and social media is the number one place for that, to get these rewards from other people, from these like personal connections that seem like personal connections, but they're not personal connections. And this digital life sort of, then if we're not careful, it's a dependence on and not a reference to see other things. And it's said to be you can't really attribute everything to Instagram and to social media because the data doesn't track. But what you can see is from 2012. When I taught last time on the weekend, I talked about this. But 2012 and 2013, when Instagram comes out, we have increasingly high rates of depression, suicide, self-harm, and every time it's a crazy up and to the right. So social media is it can be dangerous, but I think we got to understand it. It's not connection. It's not a place of like deep, personal like devotion to each other. It's a place to see things going on. It's a place to like check in on maybe what people's lives are, but it is not our platform to use to scapegoat our ability for community.
Yep.
But I think we can do that. I think it's sort of redeeming. What is it? What is social media? What should it be for me? Maybe it's a platform to be able to see other people's lives, not compare my life to them. What I've tried to do is I've tried to keep my social media to, because people have rules on social media, but I have mine. I try to keep my social media to people that I currently live with, or if I have friends back home, that I would have a conversation with or would seek a conversation out with, or like pastors or influencers, and then sports, like in Rainbow Six Siege.
Yeah, you gotta have the rainbow.
Like I put it, like I've almost put boundaries on my own Instagram for my mind in my current, like I don't follow a lot of the influencer type people that possibly I could like compare my life to. Now you can compare your life to anybody, but some of the more popular people, because I want to be able to almost keep my brain. I want to play by my own rules when it comes to that, and not the rules that it could just default to. I want to design those. So that's been helpful for me, and I had to do that literally in 2023. I was off social media for the whole year. Maybe 2022, but I was off social media for the whole year because I needed to detox my brain, dude. Mm-hmm. And that was hard. But I ended up enjoying, and now social media is more of it's an asset to me more than it is a hurtful thing. Mm-hmm. And I had to do the same thing. I talked about it on the podcast before, but with video games, I had to like completely detox from video games because it was a default, and I was getting angry, and like, If those things start to happen, I have to realize why and be able to move on to new and greater experiences, because what I might be feeling right now might not be the best for me. So
yeah, it's about creating those healthy boundaries,
100%,
and that's going to look a little bit different for everybody.
Exactly.
So just keep that in mind.
Yeah. Oh man, well, we are 59 minutes in. What a conversation, dude.
That was fun.
That was fun, dude.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely, man.
I can be kind of a yapper sometimes. Sometimes I get so lost in my thoughts, and I just start talking. Sometimes I'm like, I was just thinking, I was like, man, 59 minutes. I was like, I don't even remember what I said. I know I said some stuff. I said something, and no, hopefully it just spoke to somebody, because yeah, that's just been my heart recently a lot too. Even just kind of going back to my position of leadership is my heart breaks for people that are going through a lot of the same stuff I've been going through. And so, if anything, encourage other people to just, let's rally around each other, that when we're feeling like this, there's people out there that love you, and we just got to be there for each other.
Yep. Well, and dude, be confident that it did, because Bible says that in the end of the day, like Satan and everyone will be defeated by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony. So our testimony is powerful. So know that.
Yeah.
So thanks for being on, bro. I can't play Siege tonight, but
That's all right.
try to find another time maybe.
Yeah.
I'm gone this week, but
Dude, I'll just solo queue. And
All
I'll
right.
lose.
that's fine. All right. Well, thank you guys for joining us today. Thanks, Tyler,
Yeah.
spending time with us.
Gotta go get another Red Bull.
Dude, no, you don't.
Yes, I do.
Thank you so much for spending some time with us today. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it to others that you think would benefit from it. Also, we'd love if you could share this on social and tag at RockPointYA, just to let us see, like, what is God doing through this podcast. We make this for you, and we make this for other people to become holy and healthy in their lives. So thank you so much for spending some time with us today. Leave us a review, send it to others, and man, we hope you have a fantastic day. Thank you for spending some of it with us.